Hi, my name is Scott Dartnell, and welcome to the One Concept podcast. I'm so happy to be joined today by my longtime friends from, I believe you are both in Dublin, Ireland, Alison Kavanagh and Aubrey Gowing. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Scott. Great to be on. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, really looking forward to this interesting conversation.
Well,
Everything
I'm
about
I'm
bodywork.
interested, I'm so interested in what both of you are always working on new things, whether it's new books, new courses, new online study, travel, teaching abroad. So, uh, tell me a little bit about what's going on with you in the very near future.
Sure. Well, we've got quite a few different projects, as always, like you said, working on many different fronts. I suppose when we talk a little bit about our background, we'll talk about how really over the years we've covered every element of the industry, all the way from being working therapists, which we both still are, to being educators, to being students ourselves, continuing our own education journey, to working in the various fields like different associations, working with awarding bodies, really, I suppose, from the top to bottom, every aspect of our industry, you name it, we've been involved in it, and we continue to do that. So, coming up, we've got Australia for our next
Yeah,
project.
yeah. The conference in Australia in May of 26. Going to be presenting at that and doing some workshops and getting to share all of the knowledge that we've honed over nearly 4 decades now.
Yeah, and we've just recently completed a new micro module, new in-person course as well on TMJ. So treating temporomandibular joint dysfunction, that's quite a big area. There's been huge interest. When we opened the first seminar, we didn't even get to advertise it. We literally just sent out our newsletter and it booked out in 3 days. So we had to put on another one. We've done an online course to go with it as well. So we're always shooting new video and stuff like that. We're developing, we've got our 2 new books out for our first and second year sports massage and holistic massage students. So those textbooks have just gone up online. So yeah, continuing to work on a lot of different things. But Australia, I think, is the thing we're focused on right now because that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think where you were subject matter expert for an awarding body, where they asked Aubrey for his input on what are the levels of competencies for each stage of training. So in year one, what should the syllabus be so that the graduate is able to work with non-injured clients? In year two, what level of skill do they need to have to treat injuries? In year three, what do they need to know to be able to treat joints and nerves and so on? So it's just great to get that invitation and be seen as a subject matter expert for our industry. So
Yeah,
that was, yeah,
a
really
lot of
good.
that kind of stuff. It forces quite a clarity, which I think is something we're as educators always focused on, trying to get some of the complex nature, certainly on the theoretical side of what we do, and whittle it down to simple concepts that people can follow. So whether that's competencies at different levels of training, describing the particular role and function of each technique, because I think sometimes people learn techniques and they don't quite connect with it being, I know it's an overused trope, but that each therapeutic tool has a job in the same way a saw does one thing, a drill does another. And when you really understand what the purpose of each of those techniques are, you know exactly from the condition of tissues how and when to apply them. So that's a lot of what we've done, I suppose, over the last couple of years and are continuing to do into the near future is continuing to work on that, honing in the information, really whittling it down to simple concepts. So yeah,
Yeah,
big focus for us.
and I think that it's understanding what structures you're working on, what layer they're at within the body, and then matching the technique to that structure. So if we talk about the fascia, which is huge at the moment, fascia is very fashionable. You're talking about what layer within the body. Are you talking superficial fascia or the deep fascia around muscle, the myofascia, or subserous fascia? While it's all connected, you do have it at different depths within the body, and just knowing what happens to it when it's dysfunctional. So let's say it gets dehydrated. Okay, our goal is to rehydrate it. So if it's like wallpaper paste and it has dried out and it's crunchy and crystallized and so on, how can I pump the tissue to get the tissue fluid drawn back into the fascia to rehydrate it? What techniques am I looking at for that? So we literally go layer by layer through the body and say this is a typical dysfunction, and this is how the goal, what we're aiming to do, and then this is how we do it. So it just gives great clarity and takes a lot of the mystery out of body work so that people get really effective results. So even just a few more of the layers. Muscles, okay, they're either too tight, too weak. What are the patterns? Which ones are normally too tight? And as a result, what muscle are they inhibiting? So while a tight muscle, you want to get it to release once it's at its restored normal resting length, then you can strengthen everything in the body. But just understanding that muscle balance is new for some people. And even when we explain it to clients, they go, oh, that really makes sense. Okay. When you hear a truth, it hits you and you kind of go, oh wow, never thought about that. That's how
Literally
that
a ring
works.
of truth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the next layer, we might talk about joints having restricted range of movement. How do we restore the range of movement at joints? Make sure there's sufficient joint space so that the joint is being properly lubricated. So we want to get it centered and aligned. So how do we check for that? And how do we restore it and reassess to see that our work has been effective? On from joints, just a couple more to go.
I love
Ligaments,
that.
they can often get strained, they can get torn, and we can get ligament pain, sometimes called simple ligament pain, but that doesn't mean that it's not very painful. So just looking at how ligaments can get stressed if joints aren't centered and aligned, and how to get the joints centered so that there's less pull on ligaments. And then finally getting down to nerves. If nerves are compressed and irritated, they get sensitized, they cause pain, we get neuropathy, we get paresthesia, pins and needles, and so on. So, how do we decompress the nerve and how do we restore glide to the nerves? And within that, then we have a little bit on scar tissue. You know, what is fibrotic adhesion? How do we address it? How do we soften the collagen matrix and realign the fibers so that the normal function of that tissue is restored? So you literally go layer by layer through the body, identify the restrictions, what tool, what technique can we use to address that, to achieve our goal, and really restore the body to full function, full health. And we're just fascinated by this stuff and we just love it.
But I think we're lucky here in Ireland as well because we're able to cover all across those disciplines, where I know in different jurisdictions, there are kind of different turfs that are taken by particular professions, and hey, this is our thing. I don't know, in Canada, Scotland, or sorry, in Canada, Scott, what way is it in terms of like massage therapists doing, say, joint work?
Well, massage therapists can do any of that work here in Canada. The only thing that we can't do here is diagnose. But
Yeah.
anything beyond that, we can do rehabilitative exercise, we can assess, treat, and so we have pretty broad spectrum, and we can also use modalities too, which I
Yeah.
really like as a therapist, as a long-time therapist. It helps your body last a little bit longer. But I love what you're talking about. To me, it's like each one of these sections to me is like an executive summary. And so many times in our lives, we've worked with people or been involved or tried to follow along on something, and it just seemed too complicated. I had a longtime friend that was a very successful uh, international businessman, and way back, we all have internet now, but way back, he launched cable over internet in Canada, and United States. So super smart guy, rolled out all the people, and he said, if you know what you're talking about, you should be able to put it. Remember, we used to talk about foolscap, just the 8 by 11 piece of paper. You should be able to write your idea down on there. Anybody be able to understand how you're going to follow through with it, act on it, and complete that task. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important. I really like how you're breaking down each section so people understand how one affects the other, and they're all part of this holistic approach. Now, talking about that, I was funny because I was reading both of your uh, um bios,
Bio.
and it's ridiculous. It's like you guys would have had to start at 10 or whatever, because it's like, you're almost coming up on like, 4 decades of work and stuff. But you come from a wellness family, a holistic family, a family that thought about taking care of yourself nutritionally, physically, and mentally, emotionally, spiritually, long before it was popular. Can you go back in history a little bit for us and tell us a little bit about that, about your family?
Yeah. Well, where we say that we're coming up on 4 decades, we mean since we started training as massage therapists. But like you said, we grew up very much in a wellness family. So we were doing yoga exercises, breathing exercises, meditation as children, like at 4 and 6 years old, kind of we were steeped in that, and a holistic approach to health and wellness, including diet. And Ali, you probably give a bit more of the background about how dad got started and how that influenced us.
Yeah, well, mum and dad were living in New York at the time, and mum was got really interested in yoga while she was pregnant with our older sister, and she kind of dragged my dad into it, and the whole concept of mindfulness really connected with him, and he was like, there's really something in this, to how to reduce stress, how to work with the natural repair within the body. And he used to have us do exercises like looking at a candle flame, just to get us to still the mind, be quiet, and just connect with the relaxed part of the mind and our own energy. I always loved that side of things, the maybe a little more esoteric or spiritual side, but I feel that being able to connect, to drop into the heart, to really feel into things is an intuitive way that I approach body work. I know Aubrey's very mechanical, methodical, practical, and his mind works very quickly in that direction. We get to the same place in the end, but we kind of come from two completely different perspectives. So I think dad kind of instilled in us, work this out for yourself. Does this feel right to you? If you asked him something, he'd never tell you the answer. He'd say what he would do, and then think about the outcome of our actions. And is that what we want? So we're never.
He'd guide you through questions rather than giving you the result.
Yeah.
So you did still have to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that has held true when we explore a particular technique, or we read research papers all the time, and we say, well, is that what we're seeing in clinic? Does that evidence bear out? And if we find a better way of doing something, we change to that immediately. So we've been able to study with industry leaders throughout our career, first of all, training with them, and then later on collaborating with them. So I got to train with Leon Chato, Tom Myers, Ben Benjamin, Benny Vaughan, Teluca, James Waslowski, Hildegard Wittlinger in the Dr. Vodder School in Austria. So yeah, we've just had a phenomenal
Eric
journey.
Dalton as well.
Eric Dalton, of course. Yeah. Oh my gosh, saving the best to last. Just these, amazing people that had a phenomenal insight, and we could then incorporate that into our experience and what we were learning, and find our own path through it as well.
Yeah, and very much like testing things out in clinic, that I think we consider ourselves quite fortunate that we have been able to have these long careers as therapists as well as educators, that you have that real world experience, that you are testing the hypothesis with every client that comes into you. You're saying, well, is this the typical pattern that we see? Is this technique doing what it should? What other intervention might be necessary here? So you have the benefit of being able to literally test, and over again. They talk about the replication crisis in academia, people not repeating research. Here you're repeating it with every single client that comes in over decades. So you feel that great confidence in what good body work can do for people, how it can really change their lives, get them out of pain. Even recently, we see this with students as well. We had two students in the same group within about 10 minutes of each other. They were in last week on Thursday evening, and they said, oh, I've been treating that client that I'd asked you about, and they happened to take their normal painkillers for the last week. And the other girl said, I've been treating a client who hasn't had to take her painkillers for the last 10 days. So both of them saying this independently. As second-year students, they're having these life-changing impacts on their clients already. And they're not telling them, of course, like you said, we don't diagnose, we equally don't get involved in people's medication. They're not telling the client to go off their medication. The client is waking up and going, oh, I don't have pain today. Let me wait and see. Gosh, I think I don't need to take my painkiller today because I'm doing pretty well. And then they'll check back with their doctor. They might get their medication adjusted, whatever it might be. But the driving pain that was causing them to need regular pain medication has been alleviated. So you get to see these results just over and over again.
That's excellent. That's a big thing. I think that's one of the greatest things about massage itself, is that we we see, we've lived long enough, and now we have clients that are as old as us or older, and we've seen the the great things that medications do. Let's face it,
Yeah.
modern science is incredible. It's given us
Mhm.
so many advantages. It's
Mhm.
created so much better health in our world, but also pain medication is one of those things that we see as therapists, and we see the damage it does to people. Um, whether it's just having trouble just with the amounts of that medication that they're taking, or just the physical part of it, their kidneys, their liver, all these other areas that these long-term use. And for years and years, everybody said, "Well, I'm just taking a Tylenol. I'm just taking an Advil and or ibuprofen and acetaminophen." Uh,
Yeah.
but everything has a result, and I think that's what people forgot. Is it's like these have no results to them. I can take them, and then you see people that have read that or heard that, and then you say, well, how many are you taking a day? And it's like you're aghast. You know what I mean? Like they're buying the extra large bottle and they're going through it quite quickly. So I think that's
Yeah.
great that
Yeah,
you're
we
showing
see
that
that.
to the students, right? And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they see that. And the other thing about kind of proving, thoughts or hypotheses in different treatments.
Mhm.
My greatest learning moments is that when I go in, I go like, I know what's wrong with that person. I know how I'm going to try and help them out, or not fix them, but get them on their way, make them feel better, and have no result. Because in my mind, I kind of probably already created this idea of how I was going to treat this
Mhm.
person without really paying attention to some other things.
Yeah.
And that's what the great thing is about what we do, right? We get to see the person over and over again. So, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. And I like what you said too, Allison, is that lots of times we have all these great techniques. Our friend that we all met down at Eric's thing, Eric Stevenson, is that our greatest gift we can give our clients is presence. Like
Yeah.
this being there is probably the greatest. And I thought about that for a few days because, we go sometimes into the treatment room and we have so much external noise going on in our head. So I always try and set up my room. I've got the diffuser going with the essential oils. I've got my fireplace going. I've got all these things to kind of put myself into this therapeutic state of mind, right? So I don't know what you try and do to get switch yourself from being teacher, instructor, writer to being therapist. Those things are sometimes a
Yeah.
little difficult.
I think it's focus. And again, we've two different approaches. I have the diffuser, the aroma oils, the music going, the heat cranked up, everything cozy and snuggly, sheets, towels, everything laid out pristine. Aubrey's like, yeah, I don't need any of that stuff. Lie down and let me
I'm a
work on you.
slightly
Minimalist.
pared back to the minimum. I always say I don't like faff. Not to say that it doesn't have its place, but I think it's exactly what you said, Scott, that being present with your client means you are able to pick up, like I always say, like therapy is an ongoing process of evaluation. That it's not, you assess the person and now I'm doing my treatment. That when you're present in that treatment session, the client is, or the body really is always telling you what's going on. It's just, is the therapist present enough to read the signs? We oftentimes talk about intensity as opposed to pressure because oftentimes in a treatment session, people will reference pressure because it's a very known quantity. You say pressure, the client knows what you mean. Do you want more pressure? Do you want less pressure? But I would always talk in terms of intensity. And I would say that you should be working using 4 different elements that you're strong enough to be effective, light enough to be pain free. And that's area, angle, pressure, and pace. So pressure is only one of those 4 elements that creates intensity because I don't do very heavy work. But yet clients who think I need deep pressure, I need pain to achieve a result, they still feel intensity. So they're happy. And if you get those 4 elements right, you're right on that edge of maximum benefit, maximum change in the tissues without kicking in the client's stress responses. So you're really making the most headway possible. And if you're watching the client moment to moment, you'll notice when you start to become too intense, because even if they're the kind of person who says, I can take a really strong pressure, you'll notice they start to flinch. They start to breath hold. They start to tense up. When they tense up, it makes treatment less effective. And here's why. When muscle tenses, it pushes you back out to the surface. If the dysfunction that you're trying to address is a couple of layers down. You need those muscles to stay relaxed to address where that problem is. When you start doing heavy-handed, painful massage, which, to be fair, is still practiced in some places, it means that those tissues are pushing you out to the surface. You have to use a lot more force to get down to there. And you get into this downward spiral of creating more pain, more guarding, more force. And you're just fighting the body. Whereas I think if you're listening and you're working with the body, then it becomes a much more graceful, flowing, impactful treatment, because it's actually achieving the result the client wants. Because some people will say, oh, clients want a bit of pain. I'm always like, no, what clients want is results. And if you're listening to the signs, if you're present with that client, your nervous system is communicating with their nervous system. You're working together to achieve those therapeutic outcomes.
That's what
Yeah, and
Eric
another couple of
referred to.
points on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just found when I started out, I was following a routine. We learned a sequence, and I just did the routine: 6 of this, 3 of that, did it, rinse and repeat.
Yes.
And I honestly have to say, while I was doing that routine so I could clear my mind, bring heat or energy into my hands, it was like they really felt the benefit of the treatment. I wasn't really tuning in to know, am I being effective? Has this tissue changed much? I feel my understanding and practice is continuing to evolve, where it's just a different focus, where I'm feeling for the tissues. So like that, the client can come in and say one thing, and I'm automatically thinking, oh, low back pain. They must have tight psoas. They must have maybe tension in their TFL, their quads. And I'm already running through a whole slew of muscles I want to assess and treat. And then when I get in there and assess those and check, and that's not the issue, then I have to really get my, detective skills and kind of go, okay, this isn't what I thought it was from what they described.
Exactly.
Now I have to start gathering all the puzzle pieces and start fitting it together to see what is the root cause of their issue. It's not what I initially thought, but if I'm present, if I'm listening to the body and I'm assessing from what I've seen with other cases before, trying out different techniques. I had a young guy in, 16, playing international frisbee, which I didn't know was a thing, and he had like a rope in his TFL. It was like it had been embedded there. Got him side-lying, pumped, did a little bit of pin and stretch, and did some muscle energy technique, a couple of trigger points that were deactivated, and it just resolved. And he was nearly like, oh my God, my pain is gone. He was like really emotional about it. And from what he came in with, I was kind of going, that has to be the psoas. Has to be psoas. Maybe it's the lower attachment. I'll get in, palpate that lesser trochanter where it's connecting in. And it just shows you, don't have a fixed idea about what you think is going on with your client, because it could be a completely different story when you get there.
Be open to what's in front of you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think particularly
you did a great job explaining that. You did a great job explaining that. This, like what I said earlier, sometimes you think and it's like Eric Dalton was always big about the using the term brain-based therapy, right? And I use that more and more with my clients, and I said it's in your head, but in a good way. So when someone says it's all in your head, don't take that as a bad thing. Take that as a positive thing, in the sense that you have some control over that. And as compared to a lot of people feel that are in chronic pain, that they're never kind of in control of the situation and stuff. So just moving forward, I want to talk about how the two of you started your school. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah.
Well, it was actually our father that started the school. He started the first holistic healing center in Ireland in the early 80s. His day job, he worked for IBM. He was into fiber optic cables when that was a new thing, laying them under the ocean for what then became the internet and so on. So he had quite a mechanical, a different background, but he was always passionate about diet, health, nutrition, mindfulness, functional medicine. So when he started the Holistic Healing Center in the early 80s, he started to say he wasn't a massage therapist. My mom was actually the massage therapist, even though she was a primary school teacher, and she trained in massage therapy for getting rid of, neck and shoulder tension when we were studying for exams and stuff. So Dad then decided to start doing a massage class because he felt it was a really good way for people to switch off, relax, physically let go of tension so that the mind could then follow, that you'd get that holistic approach of lifestyle, reducing stress, releasing tension in the body. So he actually started the school, and then myself and Aubrey took it over.
Been going strong ever since. Yeah.
Absolutely. And developed and expanded. We used to have a lot more focus on holistic therapies like holistic massage, which is based on Swedish massage, reflexology, aromatherapy, Indian head, hot stone, pregnancy massage, you name it. If it existed, we went and studied it, trained to be tutors or teaching assistants, and then educators, and then brought it to our school. But in recent times, it has really switched a lot more to corrective manual therapy. So we've kind of amalgamated all the best techniques that we've found from all the amazing teachers we got to train with, and hone it down into really effective.
Yeah, I think it's that the education has really followed our interest that we see in clinic. That, you know, treating chronic pain is a fascinating subject. It is very immediate and measurable when you get improvements with your clients. Whereas I think we love relaxation therapies. It's very much where we started, but it's a lot harder to quantify. You know, I feel better getting off the table. How much better? How much less stressed? Whereas I had pain and now I don't. I could only lift my arm to shoulder height and now I can lift it over my head. You know, these things are dramatic, measurable, objective things that we can show have changed within that treatment session. So I think that has really led our interest in clinic, and that has gradually spilt over into what we do in the college as well. That the type of students I think we attract because of the reputation we built is people who are interested in the same kind of stuff we are, getting really good at that corrective manual therapy.
Yeah, and we find we get a lot of physical therapists, physiotherapists here that while they're doing their 4-year degree program, in their second or third year, they're coming into massage class because they're not being taught that stuff anymore. They maybe get basic effleurage, basic petrissage, but they're not getting the understanding of the different layers and how to work down through them. And even the results that your second year guys are getting with like frozen shoulder. Not sure if you wanted to show that some of the concepts that Aubrey has
don't know if you
uncovered.
Want to take a look. Well, some of the things we were looking at I think are quite interesting. People might like the anatomy, because I always think knowing your anatomy really helps. So when we look at like a skeletal model like this, we've put on some muscles. Just looking at frozen shoulder was the thing we were doing recently in class, and there was one of the guys had really restricted range of motion. We're saying, well, you have different layers. Like you have this inner layer here, which is the synovial membrane. You have other things like structures in here. We can see slightly cut, but we can see the labrum. If people are familiar with labral tears, there's just this ring of cartilage, kind of analogous to the meniscus in the knee. But this synovial membrane has other layers very close to it. So then we have the joint capsule being the next layer. We have various ligaments in here as well. And you look at how these are like little slivers. So we have the ligament, the capsule, the synovial membrane, and you can imagine if the space between these starts to become a little bit fibrous, if the fascia dehydrates and starts to stick, these layers can begin to just stick together. And then we see even muscles in the vicinity, like we've part of supraspinatus here is being cut away. But again, it's sitting right on top of these other joint structures, and how easy it is for these things to become stuck. You know, we talk about adhesion an awful lot and say one of the primary goals in therapy is to release adhered tissue. And I don't think people even connect with exactly what an adhesion is. So when structures that should be separate become stuck to each other, that's adhered, like an adhesive, like a glue. That is the process of adhesion. And the key there is should be separate, like that synovial membrane, the surrounding ligaments, and the capsule. So if bodywork can start to hydrate these tissues, we can start to release some of that adhesive process. Then these layers become independently mobile again. They're able to glide across each other. And the guy who was in class, he's quite physically active. He's probably late 20s, early mid 20s. If he's watching this, apologies if we got the age wrong. He was saying, I'm sorry about here. And he goes, it's been like that for about 4 years. And again, he's done all the standard things. He's had injections and things like that, and said, you know, things would help for a little while and it would wear off. I'm literally just demoing in class, showing how we can use the arm to mobilize those deeper layers of tissue. and then release that adhesion, and he gets off the table and he's got full range of motion and no pain. And even though he's a second year student, he's still flabbergasted. And I'm like, why are you surprised? It's like, wow, this stuff works. Like, I would hope nearly 2 years into study, you've got a reasonable idea that this stuff does work. But it's always very different when you feel it firsthand. It's real, it's visceral. It's very different to an abstract, to a theory of us just saying you can get these great results. And then when you feel it, you're like, this is something that's been killing me for 4 years, and in the space of 15 minutes, it's resolved. So that kind of stuff I think is always really interesting, and getting down to the nuts and bolts, because when people talk about that kind of adhesive capsulitis, you oftentimes see images on the internet of folds that have gotten stuck together. And I don't think that's the process. I think it's layers like a sandwich that have just got stuck together rather than these folds. And that might not seem like a big difference, but having that clarity about the anatomical structures makes it easier to evaluate when you're treating. Am I addressing the right tissue? Is it releasing? So one of the things I think we're also really passionate about is getting across the importance of the local anatomy and understanding it. And like you said, in a way that you could explain it to an 8-year-old. I think that's really important, that you should be able to certainly go into the complexities, but you should also be able to simplify it down without losing cohesion in the explanation, that the explanation still stands up, but it's simple, that anybody can understand it. Different layers sticking together. If you create some movement and some motion in those tissues, you can create some hydration that will then, once it's hydrated, start to release the adhesion, because that's all it is. It's just stuck. We can unstick it.
Yeah, and even go down through the layers, like releasing the bicep. People don't understand how important the bicep is on shoulder movement, that mechanically it can drive the head of the arm bone.
Humerus, yeah.
Humerus
A lot more
under
involved in
the shoulder.
rotator cuff issues than people really realize.
Realize.
Biceps such a big mover, and most of
Yeah.
us, our biceps always shortened because our
Yeah.
arms are mostly always bent. Our arms are hardly ever like down by our sides, right? So
Yeah.
and one of the things, well, you've written a book about it, and I use your book as a reference all the time on taping. I'm
Yeah.
always, my clients are always surprised, and I'm always surprised about how much relief and confidence in movement clients get when you tape them also. And
Huge.
it's it's incredible. They get to actually understand firsthand how powerful touch is, this stretch or touch on the skin, and explaining that to them, they just like, no way, yes, it's true, it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fascinating when you talk about taping. Like,
Yeah.
one of the ones that we see a big change in is when we do a knee taping.
Yeah.
And we do this in class because we're up on the first floor here. We've got a stairs. So after we've done the soft tissue work, somebody who has a pre-existing knee issue will oftentimes we'll put on like one piece of tape and say, go up and down the stairs. And while they go out of the room, I'm saying to the class, this isn't going to resolve it. This is just the first step. We're just evaluating, when does change happen. They come up and they're like, yeah, I don't feel too much. You put on a second piece of tape. So you're providing support in another plane, from another vector. You get them to go up and down the stairs, and they kind of, yeah, I think it's a little better. Let's put on a third piece of tape, and they go up and down the stairs, and they're like, oh, that's much better. And I'd say, would you go for a run right now? And they're like, oh, I don't know. That means you need a fourth piece of tape. So like the hands-on intervention, you only do as much as is required. When you put the fourth piece of tape on, they come back up and they're like, I'd go for a run right now. So you're going, literally, the only thing that has changed is the degree of support, how happy the nervous system is feeling, how confident it is around that joint.
Yes.
Just by applying tape. And it can
Often
change
it's such a big deal with clients, right?
Huge.
Especially older clients. I found that the tape significantly makes a big change with my older clients that have any type of neuropathy. You're using that tape and they feel that they're getting more feedback. They feel like they have more confidence about making that step, or really kind of extending that knee when they're walking. So you'll watch them, they don't want to extend that knee. They're afraid of putting that foot down, right? So I love the tape. I think to me, I always say everybody, it's the best form of home care there is.
Yeah.
Because whether people do their stretches or exercises at home, that tape goes home with them. So
Yeah.
I noticed that you got your rock tape in the back there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rock Tape have become a sponsor of our what we call our therapeutic tools workshop, where we do some cupping, scraping, and taping. So all very much tools that Rock Tape are involved with. So they've been very generous sponsors with us. Love their products.
Oh, it's a great product. I use the well, Brad Norris. You met Brad Norris here, one of our
Yes.
trainers.
Yeah.
Phenomenal
Great
guy.
guy.
So it's like tape's no good if it doesn't stay on. So I
Yeah.
always use the waterproof tape, the if the person's skin is up to it and stuff, and it could
Mm.
stay on. And it's funny, I had a doctor literally come back in a week later. He was a doctor. And I go like I told him to take it off about 3 4 days later. He left it on. He goes, "Know what? I left it on. I love this stuff." And he's actually this morning going in for a knee replacement surgery. And I was just trying to get him moving and get him mobile before he had that surgery because he had kind of stopped getting up and going and stuff, even though he was 78 years old and just retired from being a doctor maybe 2 years ago. So guy's full
Mm.
of energy. But one of our receptionists says, that doctor comes in and sees you a lot. And he says, well, he understands that he's prepping for something really big coming up. And after the knee, then he's getting his hip done. So
Yeah.
he said, when can I come in after I get my knee done? I said, you can come in right away. We can do
Yeah.
stuff right away. We can keep
Yeah.
you going. And so he's already booked, like he's already coming in early next week. So that's the other thing. People feel like they have surgery or they can't come in, they can't get treated. And there's a lot of different techniques that we know that we can employ instead of just working directly over the site. So I,
Yeah. And
I
I think it's important to emphasize as well that how close to the time post-surgically you can treat kind of depends on the therapist's own experience and skill set. That if you're newly qualified, I would recommend taking a more cautious approach because you need to understand how not to stress the injury. As you get more experience, the likes of yourself, myself, Ali, I'm sure
yes.
hundreds of people watching this, if you're a very experienced therapist, that time frame after surgery gets so much shorter. And I think the value to clients getting some pre-surgical soft tissue work means there's less tissue trauma from trying to open up the joint to do the replacement, and then post-surgical treatment to really help them with their rehab. We've seen phenomenal improvements, like really recovery times cut down by a factor of 10 just by doing some pre-surgical treatment and post-surgical treatment. It's huge.
And it's good because just going back to this older gentleman and the doctor, is that I said, you understand that the most important work you do is in the first few days after you have that surgery. You've got to
Yeah.
get that knee moving. And we've all had clients that have not been able to do that, have not been able to work through that discomfort. And he says, no, I've seen that too many times. I'm going to be able to work through it. Let me understand that. Because you see the people come back in that for whatever reason, I've had a few clients that unfortunately were using, had been on pain medications for quite a bit of time, and then that gets cut off. You get that surgery done. They just can't push through that pain level. And it's not any fault of their own. It's
No.
because these artificial things have been happening in our nervous system due to the meds that they were taking. But you're right. Yeah, first time therapists, but most first time therapists wouldn't invite them back in immediately anyway, though. So it's like, no, I don't
Different
want to see
protocol.
that. I don't want to see that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm always interested post-surgical. I always want to see the handiwork of different surgeons, and some are like tailors, let's put it that way, and
Yeah.
some are.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
are
It's true.
some are
Very true.
But
highly
yeah.
skilled. Some are more
Yeah.
more like Armani, and then some are more like Levi. So I
Yes.
that's it. I always try and tell people that. So it's good to
Yeah.
have someone that does great work like that. So Aubrey,
Yeah.
can you? So you have the school going right now, and Allison, you can either one of you can answer it. You have the school going right now. You're running these classes now. You have two campuses, but you're also doing all this continuing education at your campuses. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. We kind of serialized them to an extent where we went and structured it. Like we used to kind of nearly pick different topics and we would create notes from scratch for each one and PowerPoint and all the rest. And then we said, look, we should really group these things together. So we've got kind of a sequence that I think covers really all of those high points where we do like just there in January, we did our pelvis and lower extremity seminar. In March, we have our neck, shoulder, arm, and hand. So it's kind of neck and upper extremity and shoulder girdle. Then we do another one called Unlock the Spine, where we recap how to get the pelvis out of its torsion position. Because I think you could literally take 100 people off the street and 100 of them are going to have some degree of pelvic torsion. For some, it's going to be very mild, but for some, it's going to be really significant. We see this all the time in clinic and all the time in class when we check the pelvis. The only time we see people when they're level, I've had a couple, and I'm like, oh, your pelvis is level. And they go, oh, I was in to see Ali last week. And I was like, oh, okay, you've had it corrected recently. So we look at how to get all of the facets going, moving properly, opening and closing, both sides in each section of the spine. So we call that one Unlock the Spine. It's a phenomenal seminar. And then we do Treating Trapped Nerves, where we do treat the kind of primary areas of compression, the different kind of multiple crush phenomena for the upper and lower extremity, and then learn to floss the 3 major nerves in the upper extremity and 5 major nerves in the lower extremity. And then we do our cupping, scraping, and taping. And then our latest one is TMJ. So we tend to run those kind of once a year here in Ireland, but then we're going to be over in Australia. We're going to be doing the upper extremity and treating trapped nerves. And then we're doing a couple of specialist workshops for the conference, Massage and Myotherapy's annual conference. So those tend to be like, they're quite formulated at this stage. And they do kind of, once you cover all of those seminars, you really kind of have covered all of the major areas of the body. But we tend to, again, we focus in making this as accessible as possible, where we talk about common patterns of dysfunction, how to recognize those common patterns and how to address them, but also look then at atypical patterns when they do exist and what to do about those. So it's a very comprehensive training program that goes above and beyond our normal education program, where, like we said, our first year, second year, third year students. But anybody with a massage training background can take those. And then we have a lot of online modules as well. And I think, again, we take a very easy to follow. We talk about like the unbroken chain to the greatest treatment outcomes. And I would say the steps in this process are understand the condition, first of all. So when we're talking about something like shin splints or TMJ or whatever it might be, we'll talk about, well, what is this condition? What does it involve? What tissues are involved? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Then we go through the assessments for that condition. So it's very targeted, because oftentimes when you cover assessments, you're covering so much in different areas of the body for all different things. People get a little bit confused. They start to conflate things after a little while. So this is the assessments for this condition. Then we do the treatment for that, which again, we're still assessing as we're treating, but we're systematically working our way through those tissues, where we'd always say, treat tight muscles before weak. You're not just symptom treating. And then you're going to go through the kind of home retraining. What are the targeted exercises for that individual? So those micro modules, they're available through our website. Anybody can take those at any time. They're little standalones. They're generally about an hour in duration. So it's a nice little powerball of information that you can just get stuck into, start practicing that in clinic, implementing it, see how you get on. And once you purchase one of those modules, I mean, that's available to you forevermore. They don't time out.
Yeah, I think we've so many areas of interest, and sometimes our clients say, when do you actually sleep? Like, we do tend to work 6, sometimes 7 days a week. We know we should have a bit more work-life balance, but it doesn't feel like work when you absolutely love what you do. We love sharing our knowledge with the students. We love seeing the results that can be gotten with body work with our clients in the clinic. And I just think the future of body work is so exciting. AI can't do body work. You know, while we were fascinated with AI, and it's really interesting how that's evolving and developing, you know, hands-on skills are still hands-on skills, and there'll always be a demand for those.
Because one of the things we talk about is, you know, when you're putting your hands on your client, it is a very direct plugging into the other person's nervous system. So it's communicating human nervous system to human nervous system. Because there's a lot now where they're developing different robots to try and do massage. And you're going, but no matter how sophisticated that gets, it's still not a nervous system communicating with your nervous system, because there's so many signals that are below our conscious awareness. You know, that they talk about this when they put like ECG helmets on people, and they'd say, as you do particular movements in body work, you start to get what's called entrainment, that both the client and the therapist, their brain waves, the peaks and troughs start to synchronize. So you are synchronizing with your client's nervous system when you do treatment. I don't see AI ever getting to that level of refinement, that it's this unconscious communication layered on top of subconscious signaling and then conscious awareness, the dialogue, the communication that you're having with your client, the instructions you're giving, the feedback they're giving you. That's just on a conscious level. How could you replicate that? So I think our industry is probably one of the very few. I think a lot of people would have said this 10 years ago, oh, our industry is going to be fine. It's not under threat from AI. But I think the massage industry probably is quite uniquely placed that we don't see the same kind of threat to our industry. But if anything, we see the benefits of AI as a tool to help us develop our understanding, to continue to push the envelope of what's actually happening in a therapy session so that our story improves, even if our techniques don't radically change.
I think that was a wonderful explanation. Thank you. That's what I was trying to explain to people. We were at one show and they had these robots doing this massage, and people had to wear these suits. So I said, so now people actually have to wear a suit to get a treatment by this robot, and it's like, and honestly, what it is people trying to skip having humans at their clinic or at their spa or whatever, and like, I don't know, go have a hot tub or something. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
it's not going to replace massage therapy. It's not going to replace massage therapists, and that human contact, which so many people don't get enough of. Like, as you know too, it's like when I see my senior clients. I'm probably the only one that touches them. I'm there. Besides that, they're not getting that contact. So it's super important to their physical and mental health, and that they're getting that care, and they're always very, very thankful that you're there for them. And because as we get older, we have new pains every day, because they're like, this one's fixed, but we have another one. Like, I've got clients like that, like, come in, it's like, oh, we finally, my shoulder's great, oh, it's my hip now, Scott. And I go, okay, let's go. We'll still work your shoulder again, though, just to make sure it's staying lubed up, and that the no, we joke around. But
Yeah.
one of the things I want to talk to you about also, Aubrey, was just about how many books that you produce. Can you tell us, just go through some of the different um,
Sure.
textbooks
Yeah.
and workbooks that you've created for therapists?
Yeah, so I suppose the first textbook I wrote was my lower body myoskeletal and sports massage, which I think we can probably see behind me here uh, somewhere. This is the lower body, and then I did my upper body. Is this one here? I'll probably even open those up so that we don't have doors in the way. You guys can see it. So lower body, upper body, and then I did complete, which kind of combines both of those. It's kind of the hardback collector's edition, but there's some additional articles. There's other information in
I'm
that
so
is going to be
happy
able
I've
to.
got the collector's edition.
You got the collector's one.
I've got the collector's edition, and personally
Well,
signed by the man himself. So I'm very happy with
yeah.
that. Right?
So those were kind of the three that I think really encapsulate the core of what we do, all of the concepts where we talk about, even things that people don't normally talk about. Like, they'll say, okay, posture, working posture is important. But we break it down. Well, what constitutes good working posture? This is something I've noticed I'm saying more in class these days, that in some ways, particularly when you get to refinement, you've mastered the principal skills of bodywork. As you're starting to really refine your technique and how you practice, I'd say where you place your feet is almost as important as where you place your hands. That in order to get the right leverage, that it's maximum outcome with minimal effort, that you're using your body weight without effort, you're conserving your energy, but you're also using inertia to create and affect change in the client's tissues. So there's little concepts like that, like even talking about simple things when we talk about postural assessment, and people will sometimes poo-hoo posture. They'll say, well, there's correlation but not causation between posture and pain. And I'd say, well, what is good posture? And people will describe things like having your head straight and level and your neck straight. I'm like, no, good posture can be really simply defined. Good posture is the most efficient position of the body for overcoming the effects of gravity. It always takes effort. If you've no effort, you lose consciousness now, you're going to tip over and you're going to hit the ground. What stops you from falling over is muscular action. And the position that allows the skeletal structures to bear the most weight and the muscles to only act as mild supports, that's good posture. It's the most efficient position for overcoming the effects of gravity. We adapt less efficient positions because it helps us to avoid pain. But that's where body work helps. When we come in and change those tissues, improve range of motion and everything else, the client can now adopt a more efficient posture. But the same happens when we're working, that what allows us to use body weight with minimal muscle effort is the best body mechanics. So that's going slightly aside. Those are the kind of things that are in the book. Then the other book is the taping book you mentioned, and it is assessment and taping strategies, because it kind of accepts that there is no one size fits all. I find a lot of the taping text that I found out there tended to focus on taping patterns, but not why you're using them. So this is why we included assessments as well. And it's very much geared towards the syllabus that we teach to here in Ireland. So I don't know if some people find some of the assessments are maybe slightly unusual ones, things like Decker veins, tenosynovitis, and things like that. There's some unusual things in there because they're on our teaching syllabus here. And then more recently, we've developed 2 new ebooks for our first year and our second year students. I can share one of those for a second if you want to have a quick look.
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting. We always wrote our own course manuals, so we had to develop them, design them, continually update them, make sure the glossary of terms in the back was up to date and so on. And we've consistently improved on those as we went along. So if there's enough demand, we may turn them into books eventually.
The printing is expensive. Ebooks are kind of handy.
They're pretty good.
So we kind of talk about like the different techniques that we mentioned earlier. So you're describing each of the techniques, but also giving like, what is the principal benefit? Why are you using this technique? What is it intended to do? Like even a simple thing like stretching, we talk about stretching, the purpose of stretching, how to go about stretching. There's a whole lot here that's related to our syllabus. We go through the individual techniques and how to apply them then in more detail. We provide treatment sequences. So there's, it's the usual. I think this one's about 140 pages long. I don't do things by half, Scott, me. So we're covering a lot of the different things on our syllabus here. I'm kind of flicking quite quickly. I don't know if that's making people dizzy. Let's just flick forward where he shows some of our kind of like treatment sequences and things like that. So we've got like a short version of our sequence, the more detailed explanations, kind of like in the complete book. This kind of stuff. But even a simple thing like stretching, people think stretching is about, I don't know, making you more bendy or something. And I would say, again, if you boil it down, the purpose of stretching is to restore normal resting length to tight muscles. That's it.
Yes.
That a muscle, like you said about bicep, we get so restricted because we're always bending our elbows. If it can't lengthen properly, it starts to impinge in the shoulder. So if you stretch the bicep, you're trying to restore normal resting length. Once you do that, you get all the other benefits of reduced pain, feeling less tension, better joint centration, all that kind of stuff. But the primary goal is restore normal resting length. And I think just getting those simple concepts as clear as possible in your head helps you to then implement them in practice with your clients.
Yeah, I think that you said it great. And also to remind our clients that our bodies are brilliant, and that we're really here as facilitators to try and get them to their ultimate or goal or health, right? And that trust in their body. When they cut themselves, they're that cut heals and that. So we the more education we get, and that's going on that topic. I'm so pleased that you're going to Australia, and I'm so pleased Alison's going with you, because I remember when we met at I think we first met in Costa Rica, and that was because
Costa Rica.
and it was such a pleasure to meet you. And then we got to come to Ireland. My cousin Todd, myself, and a bunch of us got to come to Ireland. Was it Malahide? Was that where we were?
Malahide, yes. Yeah. Back in 2022.
Yeah, and that was an absolutely incredible trip. And it's funny because I see clients all the time. They're thinking of going to Ireland. I said, Ireland is grand. You have to go to Ireland, as my friend Aubrey would say, right? So we had a wonderful time there, and just except for them losing. That's funny. My massage table made it there, but my suitcase didn't, right? So I just was lucky because I wrote on my suitcase the Grand Hotel of Malahide, and so my suitcase ended up making it there. A lot of people put their return address, and it went back to wherever it came from.
Oh no!
I was,
oh no!
but that was 2022. That was in the middle of everything just being crazy. No matter what airport you went into, there'd be corners piled with
Yes.
luggage. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at least it's gone back to some sort of normalcy now
Mm.
that your luggage, knock on wood, actually makes it there with you, right? So, that's why you see so many people are aggressive when they fly with their carry-on, right? It's like, I'm bringing that with me. I'm not checking my bag, no matter what, I'm bringing that with me, right?
Very
So,
true.
well, I
Sure.
just, I'm so pleased that I got a chance to catch up with you today. Um, Getting to speak to you at the Holistic College. That's where you are, right in Dublin
We
at
are.
your
Yes.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the offices as
And
we speak.
what a beautiful place. You're both doing wonderful work. Again, I'm so excited that you're both going to Australia. I wish I was going there too, because it's one of those places on my list that those adventures that I'd love to get to and see it, because it's supposed to be absolutely beautiful. My sister
Beautiful
and
place.
brother-in-law have
Yeah.
been last couple winters have been spending their winter in New Zealand, and
Yeah.
they absolutely love it there. Well, it's one of the few places where I think the New Zealand dollar is slightly worth less than the Canadian dollar. So it's a good, and
I
my,
was
and
over
my,
there in 2023,
yeah,
and funnily, New Zealand actually reminds me a lot of Ireland.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's very,
true.
Yeah.
they absolutely loved it there, and they made a little trip. Well, they get to do all these wonderful trips because my nephew is a Air Canada pilot, so they get a little help with their free trips along the way. So it's good to have people in your family like that, and that's a good thing to remember too. So always remember about your high school or your school guidance counselors. I remember uh, my sister called me a couple times. She said, "Oh, Tyler, they just don't think he's going to make it through high school, and they don't really know what he's going to do after high school." And now he's flying Dreamliners. You know what I mean? Like
Wow.
he's like, you know what I mean? So don't,
Not what anybody expected.
yeah, exactly. It's like, never give up on yourself, never give up on what's right for
Mm.
you or education. A lot of
Yeah.
people in our profession, massage, like myself, it was my kind of my second calling. It wasn't really what I thought I was going to do. And for so many people, it's turned out to just be a wonderful profession for me. I'm lucky it's taken me around the globe, and
Yeah.
that's why I always want to try and encourage people, whether it's at your school or whether it's if they want to come to Australia, go do that continuing education. Lots of our work is, it's not that we're stuck in a room with our client, but a lot of it's, we're just with our client. But get out to these educational opportunities, because I'd been a massage therapist, almost 30 years or 25 years when I met Eric Dalton, and he really
Mhm.
just kind of changed my thought about how I was working, and really reinvigorated my career. So it can happen to you at any time. You can see something or find something that really kind of catches your eye. And I always enjoyed your education. You were want to remind people too, if you ever want to take a class online, you are a fantastic educator online. You taught for
Thank
us
you.
numerous times for the Canadian Massage Conference when we were going through COVID and we couldn't do anything live. We had to do it online. You
Mhm.
had great online models. You were able to, systematically go through and explain everything you were doing, and really appreciate, one, the education, and two, the support in those during those kind of difficult times. So again, I
Well,
appreciate
Scott,
you
I
both.
think you're doing an amazing job with the conferences, and I think that bringing that education to the massage community is invaluable. So thank you for your part in our industry as well. It's absolutely phenomenal and really well appreciated.
Well, I want to thank you both again. I appreciate it, Allison, Aubrey. You're both stars in this profession, and I hope you both have a wonderful day. Thank you again for joining us on the One Concept podcast.
Thanks, Scott. Hope to talk to you
Thanks
again
so
soon.
much, Scott. It was awesome.